As we all know, Nigeria is a major upstream producer in Africa and will continue to remain so, but attracting investment in Nigeria is also critical at this point. Before we commence with our keynote speeches, let's watch this short video.
On behalf of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I'm excited to invite you to Abuja from 24 to 27 February 2025 for the 8th edition of the Nigeria International Energy Summit, NIES 2025.
NIES 2025, the official oil and gas meeting of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, will be a gathering of great minds and innovative ideas, guiding us towards a sustainable and prosperous future.
The theme, Bridging Continents, Connecting Investors Worldwide with Africa's Energy Potential, highlights the crucial role of global collaboration in unlocking Africa's vast energy resources. The theme underscores the potential for Africa to become a key player in the world energy market,
emphasizing the opportunities for investment in Africa's gas industry. We are privileged to have His Excellency Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as our special guest of honor.
NIES 2025 offers unparalleled networking opportunities, fostering meaningful exchanges that could define the future of the energy in Nigeria and beyond.
Mark your calendars for February 24th to 27, 2025. Register today as a delegate, exhibitor, or both, and join us for this extraordinary event as we ignite the future of energy.
I look forward to personally welcoming you to the Nigeria International Energy Summit 2025.
See you there. Thank you.
So from our session this morning with His Excellency, the Secretary General of OPEC, we learned the importance of Nigeria being a major OPEC member. But Nigeria has also been struggling to keep its production at similar levels, and investment is required to continue that upstream production levels. Allow me to introduce His Excellency Minister Heineken, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources from Federal Republic of Nigeria, to join us for our keynote speech. Minister, please.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all express my gratitude to all of you for finding time to be part of this session, and for us to be afforded the opportunity to be able to sell Nigeria, for us to tell the world that Nigeria is ready for investment. A few years ago, Nigeria had problems with investment, and the reason was simple. We had no stable regulatory framework. So by 2021, a law was passed called the Petroleum Industry Bill that has settled the issue of stable and sustainable regulatory framework. As you can all recollect, Nigeria is a leading producer of oil and gas in Africa. We have proven reserves of about 37 billion barrels of oil and 209 trillion cubic feet of gas. That makes us, strategically constituting about 30% of Africa's reserves that are proven. This morning I had the privilege of, being in a session with OPEC Secretary General, and it was said that the world will need about 17 trillion, dollars in investment by the year 2050, because the world is projected to experience increased demand of about 20-something% by the year 2050. That means that we need sustainable investment to the tune of about 17 trillion. For Nigeria, we want to see what quantum of this investment we can attract to Nigeria. so that we can play a role, in the global energy landscape. When this government of Nigeria, the present government of Nigeria, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, came into office in 2023, it was confronted with the problem of, lack of investment in the sector for about 12 years. And we tried to find out what was the problem. And we discovered that our fiscal regimes were not globally competitive. Oil is found in most other African countries, even in Guyana and other parts of the world. And so we needed to do things differently. And so we have been able to reform our system. Our reforms have resulted in our fiscals being better than any other part of the world as at today. When you come to Nigeria today, we recently experienced a wave of executive orders that were signed by Mr. President, giving sweeping incentives to investors who want to invest in deep water. We've also, addressed the concerns of those who are already investing there. That has to do with contracting cycle. Sometimes some contracts may take as long as 2 years. That has been reduced, to about maximum of 6 months. We've also liberalized the entire space where operators can, spend within the threshold of $10 million and below. So you don't need to, go to your partners, NNPC, that in the past was said to have, caused some delay in the course of, doing certain things. And so we also have, local content that has also been resolved, because in the past we also heard that local content became an impediment to investment. But when this government came, an executive order was also signed to ensure that there must be local content compliance. As at today, we are not misapplying the Local Content Act, where it was taken to be substitution of the big boys, with the local players. No, the local boys have also developed capacity. So they are going to exist side by side with the Slum BJs, with the Alibottins, with the Bekahis, with all the other exploration companies that, are operating in Nigeria. We have two major regulatory agencies, the NUPRC for the upstream, and then the NMDPRA for the midstream and downstream. And it's also important for me to say here that Nigeria basically services the entire West African sub-region. Any product, any petroleum product you produce in Nigeria finds its way to the entire West African sub-region. So if you come to invest in Nigeria, you essentially have a market that goes beyond Nigeria. Nigeria is a country with over 200 million people, but whatever investment you make there transcends beyond Nigeria. And so for the upstream, there's enormous opportunity. And recently, there's a bid round that was announced, and it's still going on. If you're interested, in acquiring any oil block in Nigeria, the bid round is still going on. It's because we still have enormous reserves, and we needed to ensure that we'll give these blocks to those who have capacity, financial and technically, to be able to invest, in Nigeria. We also have enormous opportunities in the midstream and downstream. Like I said earlier, recently, the president of Nigeria had to take a very bold step to remove what we call subsidy. Subsidy was taken essentially, almost all the money that our national oil company, NNPC, was making. They raised money through sale of crude oil. They used the dollars to import refined products to Nigeria. So at the end of the day, there was nothing to finance infrastructure. So when this government came, one of the things that the president did from the first day he assumed office was to liberalize the entire sector. So as of today, the midstream and downstream is completely deregulated. So you can come to Nigeria, build your refinery, no matter how small. Even the day I came here, I left Nigeria on Monday, that morning I signed about 3 licenses, for modular refineries before I came. We're also using the opportunity to, tell the world that, look, come and invest in the midstream and downstream sector of Nigeria. The market is there, and like I said, the market goes beyond Nigeria. it services the entire West African sub-region. What we discovered when the subsidy regime was going on was that we're eventually subsidizing the entire West African sub-region, because the volumes that were being consumed daily were far beyond what Nigeria was consuming. So when studies were carried out, we discovered that we're subsidizing the entire West African sub-region. So now that we have liberalized it, you can bring your money, invest in the midstream and the downstream, and then capitalize on that market. Ladies and gentlemen, there can be no better place for you to invest than Nigeria. Nigeria has been producing oil for the past 70 years. We've gone through all the challenges that new players may not have seen, and we know how, to do business with our partners from all parts of the world. Nigeria has all the big oil companies, the Shells, the Schlumbergers, the ExxonMobils, the Chevrons, all the big global players, the Mobiles that you know in this world, all of them are in Nigeria, and they've been there for years. And recently, we're experiencing a new wave of investment opportunities, a new wave of interest from all of them who didn't invest in the past 12 years but have indicated interest to now invest, because our fiscals are now globally competitive. There are executive orders to facilitate investment. There are tax breaks. There's local content, compliance. There is executive order, that has to do with, the threshold that companies can spend without, concurrence from, their, JV partners, and et cetera, and et cetera. So today, we're going to have opportunity to hear from panelists. And at the end of the day, I believe that whatever concerns you have, about investing in Nigeria, either in the upstream, in the midstream, in the downstream, will be answered. In conclusion, let me say that Nigeria is ready for business. Nigeria remains the leader of oil and gas as far as Africa is concerned. We're ready to collaborate with the rest of the world to ensure that we attract the investment that is needed to contribute to our own quota to the global energy demand. And the opportunity is there, and I don't want any of you to miss it. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Nigeria is open for business. Nigeria is ready for business. So we heard earlier from Namibia's minister an African proverb about chameleons. I'd like to add another one to that. And it says, until the lion tells his side of the story, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. And this is a platform where we all get to share our story and tell our story and invest in countries that have potential for energy, which are a majority of African states. Now we'll have a keynote speech from Mr. Ulu Verhijin, Special Advisor for the Nigerian President on Energy. Please come to the stage.
I'm far from a mister, aren't I? I am Mrs. Olu Verhijin. I'm the Special Advisor to the President of Nigeria on Energy. And it is with great pleasure that I address you this afternoon to kick off a roundtable discussion on investing in Nigeria's energy sector. In essence, what I'll be doing, just as the Honorable Minister has done, is making a pitch about why Nigeria matters at this time and why it will continue to matter into the future. My remarks will be followed by a panel discussion featuring a distinguished cast of Nigerian experts drawn from the public and private sectors who will no doubt bring to bear on the discussion their extensive knowledge and experience and provide enriching insights I very much look forward to that discussion. I'll be addressing those who are already familiar with Nigeria, and many of you are, as well as those who might not be very familiar with our country. The theme of my remarks will be on making the point that if you're already in Nigeria, energy sector, you should be thinking about expanding and deepening your footprint. If you're not there yet, now's the time. It's time to seriously consider us. Here's why. A year and a half ago, Nigeria underwent a political transition, ushering in His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the President of Nigeria. Energy security featured very prominently in the President's agenda, and he has demonstrated a very strong commitment to implementing major reforms in the sector since he assumed office. Despite our abundant endowments of oil and gas, we have over the years severely underperformed against our potential. A deep offshore competitor, such as Brazil, only has 30% of our reserves, but they produce 131% more. Natural gas, which we hold the 10th largest reserves in the world, only contributes about 1% of our GDP, and 70% of our natural gas, 75% of our natural gas remains untapped. All of these issues speak to one critical issue: underinvestment. Since 2016, we've only managed to attract 4% of total investments in the oil and gas sector, while less resourced countries in Africa have enjoyed a bigger share. When we analyzed the investment data, we also found that between 2013, when Nigeria's last deepwater project reached FID, and now, IOCs operating in other countries, operating in Nigeria, have committed more than $82 billion in deepwater investments in other countries, and they have deemed much more attractive for their capital. So what steps have we taken? At the start of our administration, we conducted an assessment of the petroleum sector, which highlighted the need for a conducive business environment to restore investor confidence and improve our competitiveness for global capital allocation. Through extensive engagements, benchmarking, and analysis, we identified high-impact issues that, if addressed, could really improve our competitiveness. Based on this very new approach of taking a data-driven approach to policymaking, the presidency issued directives and specified interventions to reposition Nigeria as its preferred investment destination. For the upstream sector, we worked with the National Security Advisor to develop and issue targeted security directives that were informed by data from on-the-ground operators. We have also issued directives to streamline approval processes by clearly defining regulatory scopes of our two regulators and reduce the extensive project timelines and the high cost premiums associated with operating in Nigeria. Our target is to shorten contracting timelines from as long as 38 months to 135 days, and to eliminate a 40% cost premium within the Nigerian petroleum industry. To enable investments in gas and deep offshore, we have introduced a clear set of fiscal incentives for non-associated gas, deep offshore, oil and gas exploration and production. It is the very first time that Nigeria is outlining a fiscal framework for deep water gas since exploration began in that basin in 1991. We have also introduced fiscal incentives to catalyze investments in our midstream and downstream sectors, including compressed natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, and mini LNG. These align with the broader Gas for Growth initiative, which seeks to displace PMS and diesel in three key sectors: heavy transport, decentralized power generation, and cooking. Our incentives are also stimulating demand for electric vehicles. We are already seeing the fruit of our work. Regulatory approvals are being expedited. Rent-seeking middlemen are giving way to local entrepreneurs with genuine capacity. And major upstream investment decisions are being finalized. We have unlocked over $1 billion of investments across the value chain in the last 12 months. And by the middle of next year, we expect to see FID on 2 more projects, including a multi-billion-dollar deepwater project, which will be the first of its kind in over a decade. And we hope many more to come. While we are making strides in the upstream, midstream, and downstream oil and gas sectors, we are also focused on tackling Nigeria's critical energy access challenge. With over 86 million Nigerians lacking electricity access, Nigeria has the largest population without power. The absence of reliable electricity costs the nation about 6% of our GDP annually. To accelerate our path to industrialization and productivity growth, we are rolling out initiatives that will expand both on-grid and off-grid energy access, and have set a target to ensure that a significant number of end users in urban areas and industrial clusters have access to at least 20 hours of electricity by 2027. To improve on-grid access, which is critical to our ability to industrialize, we have focused on improving the financial liquidity across the power value chain. As a first step, we are implementing a comprehensive presidential strategy to resolve legacy power sector debts and gas supply debts through a combination of cash and non-cash instruments. To improve revenue assurance and collection for the value chain, we have launched a presidential metering initiative designed to deploy over 7 million smart meters and ancillary technologies so that we can reduce our losses from about 40% to 20% by 2027. We intend to leverage these technologies to enable distribution companies to make data-driven investment decisions that improve access and reliability in key economic areas. By connecting these high-value zones to the grid, we address a long-standing issue, the lack of reliable power for industries. A reliable grid for industry will generate more employment, improve the purchasing power of Nigerians, and inject the much-needed liquidity into that sector. Additionally, we're focusing on expanding energy access in areas where traditional grid connections remain limited or uneconomic. To achieve this, we are deploying off-grid solutions, including mini-grids, which will improve the overall resilience of the grid and diversify our energy sources. As reliability improves, we build trust, and we continue to transition to cost-reflective tariffs. Furthermore, we are deploying additional technologies that will enable direct subsidy payments to the poor and vulnerable, as well as strategic social sectors. Before I close, let me situate these energy reforms within the context of a larger macroeconomic reform program launched by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu upon resumption of office. As the Honorable Minister said, the removal of petroleum subsidies has liberalized our downstream sector. And we've also liberalized our foreign exchange market. These bold reforms help us stabilize our public finances and boost investor confidence. Nigeria, under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, will continue to champion unprecedented reforms that will position the country to unlock its immense economic potential. We're working closely with the domestic and foreign partners and stakeholders. We're going to create jobs and advance prosperity and economic growth and development. On that note, I thank you for listening, and I look forward to the panel discussion that's going to follow.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and my apologies, Mrs. Ulu. Sincere apologies about that. Next, we have a very interesting and dynamic panel looking at the opportunities in Nigeria's energy sector. Moderating the panel is Mr. Mansour Mohammed, Head of West Africa Upstream Research of Wood Mackenzie. If you can please come to the stage, and all the panelists, could you please also join Mr. Mansour?
Thank you very much, everybody. Welcome to the panel session on Invest in Nigeria Energies. If we can please welcome the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Oil to join us. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable Minister. Last year, we missed the opportunity to have you, and I was introduced in error as the Minister of Petroleum for Nigeria. I quickly declined and said, let the man do his job first, succeed, and then perhaps I can take over. So thank you very much for joining us and for all the good work that has been outlined in the sessions today. Welcome to the other panelists. We have Mustafa Lamode, Executive Director, Health, Safety, Environment, and Community at the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Welcome. We have Mr. Austin Avuru, Chairman, AA Holdings. We have Shegun Kuteye, Director of the NNPC CNL Joint Venture from Chevron. Nosa Omorodion, who is Country Director for SLB Nigeria. Oliver Quinn, Chief Executive Officer of Africa Oil Corp. Peter Oluwononi, who is Head of Client Relations, Anglophone West Africa at Afreximbank, the financiers of the Africa Oil and Gas sector. And we have Rob Holden, Vice President, Multi-Client, Africa, Mediterranean, and Middle East at TGS. Thank you very much all for joining us today. I would like to start with the first question for Honorable Minister. You talked about the vast resources that Nigeria still has. There's still a lot of upside potential from brownfield and exploration prospects. For those who joined us a little bit late in the room, can you please give us another recap of what are the opportunities in Nigeria for E&P, the opportunities to grow production? NUPRC last month launched the 1 million barrels per day initiative within 24 months. How is government going to support that?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I wish you, the best of luck. I hope that you'll be Minister of Petroleum someday.
Amen to that.
And you'll be an immense, you'll be of immense, benefit, to the country, if you become Minister of Petroleum someday, because of, the experience you've gathered over the years, in the course of doing what you're doing. So I wish you the best of luck. Having said that, let me, recap by saying that Nigeria is the leading producer of oil and gas in Africa. 37.5 billion proven reserves of crude oil and 209 trillion cubic feet, with potentials to double this number. These figures we're talking about were basically figures that we have been talking about for the past 2 decades. And the reason is that there has been very limited exploration activities, in the last, few years. And so our own, ambition as a government is to see how we can also double our reserves. And so as the government, from the policy standpoint, we are working together with players, to ensure that they embark on drilling campaigns. But the global practice is that as you produce, you also drill, so that you replace what you are taking out. And when Nigeria, was said to have gotten about 37.5 billion, barrels of crude, most African countries haven't discovered oil. Now, all of them, in limited quantities, they have discovered oil. So, in my own considered opinion, there is more oil also in Nigeria that we haven't discovered. So we are going to discover that and announce to the world very soon. But one of the reasons why investment was slow was because, as I said earlier, the legal framework wasn't steady. I was in the Senate in 2007 when the first PIP was sent to the Senate. It didn't pass until I left the Senate 8 years thereafter, 2015. And then it didn't pass until 2021. Nobody wants to put his money in an environment where there is no stable legal governance structure. But PIA was passed, thankfully, in 2021. And thereafter, 2 strong regulatory agencies were set up. Like I said, the Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, and then the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority to regulate both sectors of the petroleum industry. So there are enormous opportunities in Nigeria. And so you agree with me. Any liter of oil that is refined in Nigeria or that imported into Nigeria services the entire West African industrial region. And that was why the best decision. And there was consensus. In 2023 elections, all candidates from all political parties campaigned that they were going to remove subsidy because it wasn't sustainable. When the rest of the world was making money, in the wake of the Russian-Ukrainian war, Nigeria didn't make money. We made money, but we used the money to also finance fuel import. We ship out the crude, we also ship in the refined products. But there's more value in the midstream and downstream. And that's why we're saying that, look, Nigeria gives us, or gives the world, the best opportunity, for them to come and invest, explore the market, and then, create value, for the economy.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And the Special Advisor on Energy to the President has already touched on the incentives that are on offer, that have been offered on the back of the PIA already. And she's mentioned a few of the projects that are due to take FID to grow production. And I'm glad you mentioned the midstream, and that is a great segue to bring in the midstream and downstream regulator. Can you provide an overview of some of the investments within downstream sector that support access to products across the country and indeed to the West Africa region? Honorable Minister must have been referencing the Dangote refinery. It's now producing. It's a private investment, largest single train refinery, domiciled in Nigeria, Honorable Minister. So if you can talk about some of the investments and what we can look for to beyond the Dangote refinery from the downstream side of things.
Thank you very much, Mansour. Thank you, fellow panelists. It's a privilege to be on a panel with the Honorable Minister and my fellow panelists. And thank you, audience, for giving us the time to talk. Yes, so I think the key message has already been delivered by both the Honorable Minister and the SA Energy. The entire downstream sector of the Nigerian oil and gas has been liberalized. So the market is taking shape and is open for business, and a liberalized market actually, attracts investment. But in terms of infrastructure, and I think our mandate in NMDPRA is to ensure, adequate security of supply of petroleum products, across the 900,000 square kilometers of Nigeria to over 200 million people. But importantly, I think there is the coming of the Dangote refinery, which is very exciting to all Nigeria. So Dangote refinery is ramping up production and is part of the energy supply now. And in the near future, when it's fully utilized, when the utilization capacity has increased with 650,000 barrels of oil, in addition to the other NNPC refineries that are going upgrades and maintenance, and we also have other modular refinery. So the landscape and the narrative will definitely change from Nigeria being an importer of petroleum product to be a net exporter of this product. But in exporting this product, as the Honorable Minister has said, we've been servicing the West African countries, I would say illegally, or sort of by leakages through cross-border smuggling. But we want to do that legally. In doing that, we have to look at, regional approach, where we have a regional regulatory framework, with our neighboring countries, not just within Africa, West Africa, we're looking at Africa, developing the key infrastructure. And I remember just last week, I was in a conference, OTL, which is the downstream conference for oil and gas in Nigeria. And the regulator from Ghana was very excited about Dangote, that they will, instead of importing products from Europe, they'll be able to import products from the Dangote refinery in Nigeria. But the key thing is, why the vessels? And these are important investment opportunities. The reception facilities, the jetties, the vessels, the pipeline, whether virtual or the key infrastructures that we need. So these are key, investment opportunities for all investors to come and key in. And I'll talk about the midstream sector of the economy. I think midstream is like in the forefront of development. With the passing of the PIA, that brought the midstream sector of the oil and gas industry. And I think there's a lot of investment opportunity, particularly, in terms of gas processing. And we just, the Honorable Minister and the President himself actually launched the Ano Gas Project, which was first into 300 by 2. So, and there are other many upcoming gas projects, like we're looking up with the UTM, phase floating LNG in West Africa. And even if you go down the line to even the retail outlets, so with the drive to promote and deepen gas utilization within the country, it provides opportunities to invest for CNG adds-on and LPG adds-on. So there are a lot of investment opportunities within both the midstream and the downstream sector.
Thank you very much. What I am hearing is Nigeria has significant upstream potential, downstream infrastructure is coming, so it's really a hub from a vertically integrated point of view, and lots of opportunities for investors. If I move on to speak to Austin Avuru, who's an industry stalwart. You've been involved in upstream asset acquisitions for as far back as 2010, if not longer. So you understand the terrain, the challenges, and the opportunities more so in Nigeria, and a good grasp of the operating landscape. We're now seeing a flurry of M&A activity across upstream, with indigenous companies stepping up to acquire positions the majors are divesting. What else can the government do to help develop the indigenous company capacity in Nigeria? And how can some of the indigenous companies take advantage of what's on offer from the government?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Since the opening ceremony yesterday, and in particular the ministerial panel yesterday, there's so much talk about collaboration. And that's what I want to speak about, just in answering your question. For the past 14 years in Nigeria, the industry on its own has been undergoing a reordering of responsibilities. Unfortunately, the governments before this one either didn't recognize this reordering that was taking place, or didn't pay attention to it. And so it was met with some regulatory resistance. In fact, there were no regulatory rules for this reordering until the past 1 year. I have to congratulate both the minister and in particular the advisor, presidential advisor on energy, listened to her a short while ago. So today, what do we have? We have a whole new field that emphasizes collaboration. So in the upstream, we have the independents stepping into the shallow offshore and the onshore. And the IOCs moving their expertise and huge financial capacity into the deep offshore. As she pointed out, in the past 13 years, there's been no FID or any new development in deep offshore. We are now going to be seeing that from the same multinationals that are leaving the playing field in the onshore. Now, as I said, this has been going on for 12 years unnoticed. And so we neither allow those who are leaving to leave, nor allow the ones who are coming in to come in. And the lethargy that's followed
then led to an 80% drop in investments. That is what is being corrected, particularly from what the Honorable Advisor said. So what you're going to see will be a lot of activity in the deep offshore by the IOCs, and a lot of activity in the onshore and shallow water by the independents that have the capacity to do so. When you look at regional collaboration, you are going to be seeing, let's say gas, for instance, collaboration in gas. You'll be seeing export gas opportunities being developed by the IOCs through the expansion of the LNG and probably additional LNG trains coming in. While the independents will concentrate on domestic and regional gas distribution. As we speak today, the independents account for almost 70% of domestic gas distribution. That's going to go very quickly to nearly 100%. So in the next 3 years, when we'll be looking to see 3 BCF of gas distributed domestically, that's going to come from independents. They're already showing that they can do it. Seplat alone, at the end of this year, will have capacity to distribute 800 million scf of gas per day. And they are going to ramp that up to about 1.2 BCF a day. So what do we then expect? Now that we have a government that has recognized this unbundling of industry and the new opportunities, what we then expect from them is, rather than showing reluctance, indifference, or almost anger at these acquisitions and divestments, we are happy now that they understand what is happening. We then expect what we may call deliberate regulatory efforts to support the independents to grow capacity, because they have come into play in a major section of the industry, while supporting also through the new enabling business laws that are coming out, enabling the IOCs to go and show their might in gas exports and deep water operations. So that is the big, broad collaboration efforts that are going on, and we're happy to see that the current government recognizes this and is supporting it.
Thank you very much, and I like the fact that you made the point that the IOCs are not leaving Nigeria, they're just shifting focus, and they have their priority projects, and it's in the deep water. And on the point of collaboration, it's required across industry stakeholders to move forward. Let's hear from an IOC, Chevron. Chevron, given all the initiatives from the government, the opportunities, what are the opportunities that you see for large IOCs within Nigeria from what we've heard today? And for Chevron in particular, you've converted to PIA terms for your JV. You're renewing your licenses, and most recently there was a significant exploration discovery on your shallow water portfolio. So Chevron is active in the shallow water position. So what's the growth strategy for Chevron in Nigeria?
Well, thanks, Mansour, and thanks, Honorable Minister, the Special Assistant to the President, and thanks, fellow panelists. It's a great opportunity to answer that question and put things in context for Chevron. So Chevron is a 145-year-old company globally, a global player that's been around, and in Nigeria specifically, we've been around for 60 plus years. And within that 60 years, with collaboration in a joint venture with the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited and production sharing contract arrangements, we've produced over 7 billion barrels of oil and gas equivalent. And like you rightly said, we've been around and we've been very active in leveraging opportunities, and particularly the more recent enablers provided by the federal government to jointly produce the energy that the world needs, that Nigeria needs in particular. The Honorable Minister did a great job describing the potential, the reserves. And I think the Special Advisor also connected that with the need, the erosion of GDP through the underutilization of the opportunities. And that's where we come in. Like you rightly said, we've processed or renewed our licenses in the shallow water area. We've acquired a new lease offshore in the deep water space. We've shot some additional seismic, and we're doing more. and we are positioning ourselves for more exploration activities, particularly in the deep water space. And thankfully, you mentioned the recent appraisal well that we drilled. We made that public. I think those are very good indicators of our goal for the future, our objectives, or our plans. Because when you talk about renewing 3 licenses in the deep water space for 20 years, that ordinarily should give you an indication of the fact that we are here for the long haul, partnering with joint venture partners and NPCL. But very importantly, I would like to emphasize that we are a global player. We have lots of expertise all over the world. We are beginning to see encouraging signs and enablers from the Nigerian government. And when you combine that, I see the IOCs, Chevron in particular, being a key player in the future of Nigeria, Nigeria oil and gas industry. Yeah.
Thank you very much for stating that. As a matter of fact, Chevron is here to stay in Nigeria. We have a new entrant into Nigeria, Africa Oil Corp. Oliver, is a licensing round that's open in the deep water. 31 blocks are on offer. What do independents such as Africa Oil Corp look for when looking for these entry opportunities? So what are the key ingredients there? And maybe from your point of view, you look at all opportunities globally. Where do you see Nigeria in terms of competitiveness with regards to the opportunities?
Yeah, thank you, Mansour. I think, let me just start by saying that we, as you say, we're a new entrant. So we are a producer in deep water Nigeria through our ownership of Prime Oil and Gas. So we partner with Chevron in Agbami, Total as operator in Akpo and Egina. So we have a world-class, non-operated production position, which we really like. So then to your question in particular, what do we look at when we seek to enter a new country? I think broadly there are 3 buckets, if you like. The first one is subsurface. So the rocks, the oil, petroleum system has got to work, right? It's kind of taken for granted, but really high quality subsurface. The second is something that the Honourable Minister and several people have talked about here already, which is regulatory environment. So, I think there are sometimes some views out there that, people don't like regulations. Well, actually, we do like regulations. What we like are clear, stable, investor-friendly regulations, and actually regulations that are sustainable. And what I mean by sustainable is not just suitable for us as the oil company investing, but sustainable for the government and the people of the country. It doesn't work if you don't share, right? And I think we've seen many examples of that. I think the third thing that we look for is a kind of overarching important point, which is the political position of the country. Is there support for the industry there? And I think as we go through the transition here, that is more and more the case. I'm from the UK, which you can probably hear. And the politest thing I can say is it's a country that has a strong history in the upstream sector, but has absolutely no political support for it today, right? So that's difficult. Regulations come out of political support and political positions, right? So you need to be somewhere you're investing for the long term that you can be confident that, yes, there will be ups and downs. That happens in every country, but it's a landscape that's supportive of the sector, right? If I, turn to Nigeria, and how do we see Nigeria in those 3 buckets, if you like? I think first one, subsurface is big tick, as described by the Honourable Minister. Austin characterized it very well. There's significant potential there, and it hasn't been tapped for various reasons for several years. So that's a big tick. The second one, and again, it's been quite central to this conversation so far, regulatory. And again, I would echo the comments made, which is we have seen some slow progress historically in Nigeria, some complexity. What we see today is a streamlined upstream set of regulations, post the PIA, a very clear set of rules to play by. And I will compliment NUPRC, as the Honourable Minister pointed out, and the Special Advisor, having cleared many transactions that have been hanging around for a while. So things are moving, right? So that's a real positive sign. This takes you to the third point in Nigeria, which is, look, again, there are ups and downs. It's a democracy, governments change, but it's a sector that's very important to the country. So we can be confident that you can ride out those ups and downs because the country needs, and per the theme of this conference, is rightly justified in producing its natural resources. And so there's a long-term play there. So I think if I summarize that, look, we look at many countries around the world. Those 3 big buckets are where we focus. I think in Nigeria, all 3 are good. I think the regulatory one is the key right now, that has improved significantly. things are moving well, and I think it augurs very well for the license round, and I think it augurs very well for the continued development and exploration in the offshore.
Thank you very much. So, out of your 3 points, the regulatory element is within the gift of the government. The political situation is within the gift of the people in the country. And what's completely out of everyone's hands is the subsurface. And if I turn to Rob, given the recent merger between PGS and TGS, TGS is now the leading geophysical seismic acquisition company in the world. Now, how do you help companies find oil with certainty through technology, and also help reduce the time it takes to make a decision on the subsurface quality, the imaging, and ultimately lower costs for services?
Yeah, okay, thank you. And again, I'm very honored to be on this panel. So TGS has been partnering and collaborating in Nigeria for 30 years, since 1994. So we're very proud of that collaboration and that partnership, one of the oldest partnerships in Africa. And the combination of that offshore for us is a footprint, a seismic footprint of over 80,000 square kilometers of seismic. So we'll come back to that probably later. But I want to make 3 points here. So in terms of the combined company, we now have a very robust combination of technologies that we can draw from to serve the industry, right from our streamer seismic business, and we have, without question, the best fleet of seismic vessels in the world. We now have ocean bottom node capabilities with the inclusion of the Magseis Fairfield entity. We have 4D acquisition and technology. We have a lot of advancements in digitalization, as well as advancements in the new energy space. And of course, with the coming together of these two very significant companies, we have a very now broad combination of skills and expertise from our people, who are the most important resource in the company. Second point, and to talk about cost reduction, this is a challenging area, of course. It often comes down to cost, and how TGS is looking at this and trying to do our part is by, certainly on the acquisition side, is to look at efficiencies of acquisition. So we, with our robust fleet of vessels, we can look at different streamer configurations, wide tow, different and creative source configurations. We have a low-frequency source, a Gemini source, which is in increasing use around the world. And we also have projects that look at vessel speed optimization, fuel efficiencies, and of course, on the digitalization side, using satellite technology and the cloud to get data from the vessel directly into the office, which all of those can help to make any of our acquisitions a lot more efficient, which reduces overall costs. It reduces cycle time, so we have the most efficient and shortest possible project time, which in turn certainly helps on our health and safety objectives, as well as becoming more green, because we're deploying and in the water for less time. My last point here really is that on the multi-client data side, and that is that we all aspire to acquiring new multi-client data. The government aspires to that to help bring in new investment. The operators aspire to that to help to de-risk the subsurface and shorten the timeframes. and TGS aspires to it because evergreening the data library is the lifeblood of our business. So I hope that we are doing our part to achieve the project 1 billion barrels a day, which is to increase from 1.6 billion barrels a day to 2.6 billion barrels a day. So I hope we are doing our part to achieve that objective.
Thank you very much. No, sir, still on the service sector side of things. Rob mentioned what E&Ps are looking for. They're looking for lower cost services. They're looking to improve their returns. What innovative approaches does SLB have to support the oil companies as they unlock opportunities and drive down their cost of operations?
Yeah, thanks, Mansour. Let me take your question a bit back and just make a bit of reference to the presentations by the Honorable Minister and the Special Advisor. Having been on both sides of the operating side and the service side, I just want to echo their presentation that these are exciting times to take a look holistic at the petroliferous station of the country. Beyond the Niger Delta, which is where the bulk of the discoveries lie, there are a couple of other very equally exciting basins: the Dahomey Basin, Anambra Basin, Benue Trough, Chad Basin, that equally have humongous accumulations of hydrocarbons. Then the Niger Delta we talk about, basically, where the bulk of our hydrocarbon reserves have been proven. If you do a correlation, compare the Niger Delta to our neighboring basins, then you will find that the bulk of our discoveries are still in the shallow side, not even the deep side. So in terms of what can be done to be able to get down to where the real reserves that correlate to where other major discoveries are, you need technology. And that's where companies like SLB comes in. We've been in the country for 70 years plus. We logged the very first well discovery in the country. The newest discovery was equally logged by SLB. So it's been 7 years of continuously supporting improved production in the country. So through our technologies, we are transforming the energy landscape across multiple areas, including subsurface analysis, drilling, planning, and production. We enhance seamless access to data integration. But above that, when you talk about going to the deep water, when you talk about wanting to drill beyond the known depth, going to areas we call high temperature, high pressure areas, these are delineated and defined by technology. So we as SLB, in terms of trying to assist the nation in accelerating towards the 4 million barrels of production target, we are playing vital roles in the areas of bringing the requisite technology, partnership, investing in people, investing in ensuring that the right requisite tools you need to be able to support these exploits, they're all in place. And back to the main listing, it's interesting times to be in the country. Very, very interesting times. The reforms are there. We are all excited. We are looking at people. We are investing in our people. We are bringing in more people, supporting the local technology, partnering with the national oil companies, partnering with the IOCs to understand their asset scale preference and see how you can bring in technology, our operational expertise, towards driving the costs to achieve the common goal and objective of everybody.
Thank you very much, Nusa. We'll hear from Afrexim Bank before we, Honorable Minister, we get your reflection from everything that's been said so far. So, Peter, access to finance is a core part of deal completion, but also investment in developing the assets to ultimately grow production. You've been championing finance in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa more broadly, huge financier of NNPC, Nigeria's NOC, and indeed some of the indigenous players Generally, what makes Nigeria an investable destination, so the EMP space, and really what should companies consider put in place before they're able to successfully attract funding?
Thank you, Monsieur. Of course, for us as Afreximbank, Nigeria is a key member state of the bank. It's the second largest shareholder of Afreximbank. But in terms of the upstream and basically the E&P space, Nigeria is the most advanced when we look at the other countries in Africa. And as the minister have said, and the other panelists and the essay to the president, in terms of reserves and the outlook, it still has one of the biggest potentials. And that's why we've put our balance sheet very strongly to support the country, and also even the African Energy Bank that we're pursuing. We continue to see the magnitude of the opportunities, importantly because one of our key mandates of the bank is basically to indigenize what you will call local content, right? To ensure that Africans can play in the space that had hitherto been dominated by the international oil and gas companies. And that's why you saw us recently ramp up our support for Wando to basically increase their stake, but not only increasing their stake, to take over the operatorship of such a very key and vast asset. And in barely 3 months, I'm sure I'm not speaking under confidentiality, they've put almost 15,000 barrels of new production back on stream. These are the kind of things we want to see companies do. And that's the reason why when we find credible companies, we want to support them. And you can imagine that as they put that new production, the production back, of course, the gas to feed the NLNG, they have the Okpai IPP. All of this basically helps to ensure that they can basically create more jobs, the GDP grows, bring in more foreign exchange. So we continue to see Nigeria as a very big space. I think in the market today, we are also backwarding to even look at the marginal fields. We're looking at the companies that have been able to get to first oil with maybe 2,000 barrels, 1,700 barrels, and we are trying to work with them to put in place financing, $50 million, $70 million to bring at least 2 new wells on stream, because we believe that if we have 10, 15 companies doing 10,000 barrels each, right, there's a multiplier effect. We have new graduates coming from geologists, engineers, who can immediately feed into that value chain, and I believe that's the ultimate objective of the government. So Nigeria remains a very viable destination. We're doing a lot, even in the gas monetization. We had a lot of gas flare on assets. We're now looking at small companies who want to put small gas processing plants to basically, for us, from an ESG perspective, that ticks the box for us. More importantly, is to ensure that, these modular plants can be installed in bits and pieces. And we're beginning to look more and more at this opportunities across the value chain, logistic providers. As I said, it's a whole, a very viable industry. The landscape is really big. Within the vessel space, we signed 2 deals yesterday. There was a third one that we couldn't sign, another vessel transaction because he wasn't here. So that Nigerian companies can begin to provide, as an alternative to the pipeline, the badging that is required. And all of this ultimately shows and underscores the opportunities and why Nigeria remains a viable destination for us as a financier.
Thank you very much. Very, very comprehensive, and sounds like you're involved in the full value chain, supporting the energy landscape. Honorable Minister, your reflections from what you've heard from the diverse stakeholders, everyone seems to be saying and agreeing with you, Nigeria is the place to be in terms of investment.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the mergers and acquisitions that you spoke about. Let me use the opportunity to assure the rest of the world that Nigeria, just like any other country in the world, is amenable to people bringing their capital to invest and also divesting at will. We are not against divestment. I've always contended in most global fora, that we've grown enormous indigenous capacity. Seplat is an indigenous company that bought over, ExxonMobil. Orlando is an indigenous company that bought over another IOC. These companies have grown, enormous capacity to be able to operate these assets in the best possible way. Even before the divestment, most of the real work was done by our own people. Austin is here, all that are here, is Nigerians who have been the real field operators. The expatriates could be in the offices overseeing what is going on, but the real operators are the Nigerians. And so Nigeria will have nothing to lose in terms of, royalties, in terms of taxes, in terms of, the way, this thing is professionally run. We have nothing absolutely to lose. As far as I'm concerned, it creates another opportunity for Nigerians to actually show themselves. As also Navuru said, no company, and let me say it as minister, I interact with all the companies, both the IOCs, the service providers, the independent operators, the marketers. I'm the door that sees both the outside and the inside. Everybody comes to me and I engage them. I want to use this opportunity to, assure the world that no company is leaving Nigeria. All those who are divesting are going into deep offshore because they don't want to, contend with maybe the local issues, that they have been contending with for the past 70 years. The onshore and shallow water assets that they've been operating for these years, they want to leave them to, the independent operators and go deep offshore. Having been, been given the desired incentives by the recent, executive orders. They want to leave and go deep offshore. No company is leaving Nigeria because some people have the impression that, companies are leaving Nigeria. They're not leaving Nigeria. They are going to, deep offshore that is beyond the capacity of the local people because of the capital requirements. That is one. One of the things that, is important for us to also, emphasize here is that you cannot grow this industry without the major service providers. If you want to go and drill, deep water, it's the big boys that can do it. The small boys can do onshore, shallow water with their, land rigs and all that. But the main people who can enable us to replenish our reserves, who can enable us double our reserves, are the big names. Before this government came, for some reason, most of them left. And the complaint was that contracts were given to briefcase carriers who will carry their briefcases into their offices and then sublet to them, increasing the cost of projects. And that was why we said, look, let's remove the briefcase carriers. Let them remain at a briefcase level. Let them remain at the onshore level where they can do. They have also grown capacity. Over the past 10 years or more, the indigenous service providers have also grown capacity, but not to the level of the international service providers. So everybody has his own space to play because the space is big enough for all of them to play. We also want to say that from the government standpoint, we felt that, look, there was a wrong perception about how government was running the sector. You just told Chevron that all their licenses have been converted to the PIA terms. They didn't see me before I signed them. Those licenses didn't spend 2 hours in my office. The new system is that you don't need to know the minister before your licenses.
There's processes in place.
Yes, are renewed. The day I came here on Monday, I signed 3 licenses for new refineries that were sent to my office that morning. Assign them. I don't know the people. I don't want to know them. But before, today the perception was that you need to know somebody who knows the minister, so go and know the minister first before those things will be done. All those things were the things that the president said must be eliminated. And we have eliminated them. The bureaucracy is removed, and so things are now going on seamlessly. The other issue that is important is that ultimately, I believe that independent operators in Nigeria have a more critical role to play. I believe that in the future, they have a very fundamental role to play in solving our energy problems. And that's what Austin Avuru is saying. The only limiting factor is what the African Petroleum Producers Organization in Apple, together with African Bank, are trying to come together to solve. That is establishment of an African energy bank. Because the most fundamental problem they have, in most of the times, is finance. If they have money, they can hire anybody from Houston. If they have the money, they can hire anybody from anywhere. But the problem has been funding. And thankfully to other Apple members, Nigeria was given the hosting rights. We are ready to host that bank. That will be a game changer as far as the oil and gas
Make the
financing
most of it and take advantage of it. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. So, Mr. Avuru, a few people mentioned gas as an opportunity, and Nigeria has nearly 210 TCF of gas, most of which remains in the ground. And we're a few years into the Decade of Gas initiative of the government. Just generally speaking, how do you see the opportunities within that gas space, particularly in light of energy transition, ESG requirements from financiers, and generally the opportunities to supply the domestic market, whether it's gas to power, gas to industry, or exports? Nigeria has a lot of export initiatives planned, and LNG expansion, the FLNG projects being proposed, and indeed pipeline exports. If you can share some insight into your views of the upstream gas space and opportunity for monetizing gas in Nigeria.
Thank you. Again, in the past, since we first launched the gas master plan back in 2012, you have been seeing an evolving domestic gas space, and the usual initial problems of any evolving ecosystem are what we're getting. Now, you need reliable infrastructure in place. NMPC is putting that in place in terms of backbone gas distribution infrastructure. You have twinned the ELPS to 2 BCF, and they're doing the AKK, and they're doing the one connecting the east to the west. Now, when all of that backbone infrastructure is in place, you can move 3-4 BCF of gas within the country. Now, when you expand the West African gas pipeline and probably twin it and move it on to Morocco, then you have another opportunity for some substantial gas pipeline-driven gas into entire West Africa and North Africa, and perhaps even across to Europe. So that first one is infrastructure. That is ongoing. Now, the market itself, as the advisor said, they're unlocking the power sector. The power sector will account for about 70% of the gas demand. And so when infrastructure is reliable and the demand itself is reliable, then you can invest in reliable supply. So you are seeing a flux today because the demand is not reliable. You are not seeing the amount of investment in supply. And because the amount of investment in supply is inadequate, the demand side, when it picks up, it tells you there's not enough supply now. So once there's reliability of the entire system, you are going to see domestic supply and demand in the region of 3 to 4 BCF before 2030. And that is quite substantial. Now, the export gas is much easier. As I said, the big boys are playing there. They can easily expand capacity. And now with the enabling policy trusts that are coming in, unlocking offshore gas deliveries, the fiscal terms have now been enabled. It's quite easy for the Bonny LNG after Train 7 to add 8, 9, and 10. So again, if you look at our reserve production ratio for gas, it's about 90 years. It's unrealistic. We have to bring that down to no more than 20 years reserve production ratio, which means we have to triple the total production of gas, both for export and the domestic market. And as I said, just in conclusion, which I'm sure I won't have another minute, these are exciting times. I am very excited. You know, a government, through its policy trust, will determine how the industry will operate. In 1990, the government of the day came out. Purposely, we had 16 billion barrels of oil reserves at that time, and they said they were going to double that. They opened up the deep offshore. And in 5 years, between 1990 and 1995, there were some 8 billion barrels of new discoveries that have led to all the offshore production that peaked at 700,000 barrels a day. Since then, this is the first time we're seeing deliberate policy trusts, as I said, that recognizes what you now call the division of labor. That policy trust needs to enable everybody, IOCs, independents, those offshore and those onshore, for gas development and gas distribution. Once that policy trust is consistent in enabling that, we can double both reserves and production in the near and medium term. It can be done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Segun, if I can bring you in from an IOC perspective, still on the gas point, Chevron is a key gas player. You export gas through the West Africa gas pipeline, and you have your domestic gas project. Can you share what opportunities there are for synergies within the infrastructure framework for gas, and how Nigeria can tap into that and expand infrastructures for increased gas supply?
Okay, thanks, Mansour. I don't think anybody could have described the infrastructure opportunities better than Mr. Avuru. Thank you so much, sir. I really enjoyed the way you described it, and the Honorable Minister already shared the potential, so there's no doubt that we do have the reserves. I'll probably just answer that question by describing what Chevron has done or is doing to convey what is possible. Like you rightly said, we've been in the domestic gas supply space for decades, supplying gas locally. We have gas sales and aggregation agreements for power, for fertilizer production. We have an extravagant gas to liquids plant that converts gas to diesel, to naphtha. We pioneered or led a multi-investment opportunity to lay a pipeline, about 700 kilometers of pipeline from Nigeria through Benin, Togo to Ghana to support the growth and development of the West African sub-region, of course in partnership with NNPCL. So the opportunities are tremendous, and the diversity of opportunities are there. If the infrastructure is there, like Mr. Avuru already described, I would encourage all players and those who have not stepped into Nigeria to please do so. There's a lot that you can do in the gas space, and certainly gas is part of the energy mix, no doubt about that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think, Nosa, you touched on capacity building, capability development in your remark. What role do the service companies have really in terms of building capacity, developing the local service space, ensuring that there is collaboration? Not, an honorable minister said, there's a terrain for the big boys, the international service companies, and there's space for the local service providers. So how do you see that link and collaboration?
You see, one of the things this country has done very well, we don't get enough credit for as a nation, is that we allowed the private sector, the IOCs, to, over the years, effectively and efficiently bet a crop of independent and service providers, which today has led to the fact that we are probably the country that has the biggest number of independent and service companies in the world today. Deliberately, what you've seen is a transfer of the expertise that has been grown, acquired, working in these companies, now taking advantage of the entrepreneurship skill of Nigerians. Facts speak for themselves. Over 80% of service companies run in Nigeria today are alumni of SLB, Schlumberger. Over 80% of independent operators today, the efficient ones that are game-changing, are alumni of E&P operators today. That itself answers your question without going into details. So what SLB has done, let me just try and show a bit of facts from what you said, is in 70 years today, the company has a local force of over 95% Nigerians. I am the country director of SLB in Nigeria. That itself speaks volume to the leadership of the country of SLB in Nigeria. So that itself is, I didn't get there through SLB. We run what we call borderless employment. I've had the privilege of working and running part of SLB services in North Sea, in North America, working globally. So we're doing that in terms of transferring technology. We are investing not just in capacity, in infrastructures and facilities that will support the gospel to achieve the 1 million barrel extra and attain the 4 million barrel goal. I see you want me to drop off my time, but I can go on in terms of capacity building. So we are partnering with people. The one that probably excites me most now is a recent partnership with the National Oil Company, their service arm called NSERV. And the whole idea is to work in partnership with NSERV in not just co-unlocking the reserves and optimizing our production, but at the same time what you call technology transfer, working together through work share, through breeding, through alignment. So someday you have NSERV standing shoulder to shoulder, side by side with SLB.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Oliver, if we can, in a minute, we're close to our time. From an E&P point of view, what do you look for when you're looking at partnerships and collaboration? So what should indigenous companies be aware of when they're approaching you, a company like AOC, for partnerships?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And if I can take a step back to start with, I think, we operate in several countries around the continent, and I think one of the things that we feel is important and observe is that as we go through the long-term energy transition, the role of indigenous companies, whether it's service sector and crucially E&P companies, is going to become more important, right? The sustainability of the industry needs that local content. It needs those companies to get stronger. So for us, it's a really important topic in terms of building sustainable joint ventures. I think what we look for in that context then is a couple of different things, and Austin has touched on this, which is capacity, right? We want a partner of equals. Clearly an indigenous partner in our world is going to have very good local connections. They're going to understand the country more. They're probably on the ground more. But we want them to be a company that we can have equal conversations with, that we can challenge each other with. So capacity development, really, really important there. The second thing is, of course, financing. So I have to look at the guy with the money as I say this, but I think it's really encouraging that Afrexim Bank, the other initiatives, African Development Bank, that money is being allocated, if you like, and found for the sector in Africa as a lot of the Western banks withdraw from the sector, because it's really important to us, but it's also really important in the context of we want well-financed partners as well. And if we have large institutions like Afrexim Bank in this space for the long term, it gives us confidence that when you partner with local companies and indigenous partners, that they are going to be very solid entities as well. So, look, I think Nigeria as an example is pretty fantastic. And again, as described, it's been onshore, it's moving to the shallow water. There is a big gap for indigenous companies to move to the deep water, but it will come, right? It will come. And for an independent E&P like us, we partner with the large IOCs, and that's fantastic. But as we grow our company, we want to grow those partnerships with indigenous companies as well. And I think that is a bit cliched, but there's a journey we can go on there together, right? Because we have no problem with renewables and all of the other things that are going on in the world, but as an independent E&P, that's what we do. And we will remain doing oil and gas, and I think the indigenous companies, particularly in Nigeria, will remain doing that. And I think if we grow together, there's a sustainable sector there that we can create.
Thank you very much. We'll get the last word from the midstream, downstream regulator. What should we look forward to in terms of new enabling regulations, be it for gas, be it in the midstream, from you? What should the industry look out for that would be further supportive of what we're trying to achieve?
Thank you, Mansour. I would just like to comment on the gas discussion first. And I think the midstream gas sector is the new frontier of development. Actually, the gas sector in particular is the most enabled when it comes to, the objective of the PIA and also the presidential orders and other reforms by this present administration. So if you look at the entire value chain, the licensing regime has been broken down to that where players can come in and invest. And if you look at the key one is the gas-based industries where we provide, competitive pricing mechanism to determine the domestic gas price, and in doing so, the GBI is giving a strategic consideration, given that you also drive exports, advantages from that sector. And also to deepen utilization of gas, the provision of the PIA, we have the MDGIF, which is domiciled in the authority that just disbursed over 122 billion naira, to investors to co-risk and de-risk investment in the ministry. But looking forward, the country is transiting. We cannot shy away from transition. We've already adopted gas as our transition fuel. So apart from ensuring adequate supply and security of supply of petroleum product, we also want to see the country, using and utilizing its gas potential to also drive industrialization and bring benefits to our people. So in terms of regulations, we've gazetted a number of regulations, and we're looking at consolidating this regulation to tie in to the objective of energy transition in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've run out of time, but you would agree through the conversation, the 360 view of all stakeholders, Nigeria is ripe for business, not just in the upstream, but across board. And I hope the discussion doesn't stop here. We actually take it forward with all stakeholders taking advantage of the opportunities on offer. So please join me in thanking the Honorable Minister for participating, and thank my able panelists for sharing their insight, and thank you very much.